You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the ThunderQuack Podcast. I am your host, Michael Cohen, and joining me, as always, I forget what your thing is on this one.
I don't know.
It's the.
I don't agree with any of the. I don't agree with any of the adjectives unless they're
Okay.
like insults. So it's fine.
It's incorrigible. You're the incorrigible Joe.
Okay, that one I kind of like.
We're back.
Yeah, kind of.
For better or worse. Joe was sick 2 weeks ago, and I am sick. I was sick a week ago, like last week. If you're a Patreon supporter, there was no off the record last week because I had intended on recording it and then got sick and was like, this is not happening. So this will be I think this will be a shorter episode. This will probably clock in around an hour.
Okay.
Because I don't think you guys want to listen to the two of us sniffle and clear our throats for 2 hours while we talk about nerdy stuff. But you know what? It's a weird episode anyways. I don't know. This is one of those things. This might be bad news to other people. I don't want people to take this as bad news. This is to me just news. If you've been around for a while listening to ThunderQuack, then you'll have noticed in the last 3 months since the pledge drive that there's been like so much more content, so much more activity, right? If you've been listening to me on podcasts for the last year, you'll probably know that that's because I got laid off last September. And in January, I made the decision. We had already kind of planned out the pledge drive. So it was kind of a funny thing of like, we were going into the pledge drive with its own purpose, but then my personal purpose for it kind of shifted like a week before the pledge drive. Crystal and I, the girls were at my mom's for an overnight stay. And so we had, some time to ourselves to talk about stuff. And the conversation got to, my job hunt, the prospects out there being pretty garbage, and what I wanted to do. And she kind of jokingly, but not really jokingly, was like, well, can't you go work for like Kind of Funny? Like go work for Greg Miller? Cause like you love those podcasts. You love his stuff. Like you'd be great, if you were like on his podcast and like helping them with like design and whatever, and like t-shirt designs. And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. I should just pursue my absolute dream job. That'll happen. And I kind of just said that like that was my response. And then I was like, wait a second. Like I've got ThunderQuack. What if I tried to get ThunderQuack going as, my main source of income? So surprisingly, she was like, go for it, like give it a try, right? And I think partially out of like the 4 months prior of like I'll be totally candid with you guys. I got really, really close on a job that I really, really wanted. That would have been awesome. A creative director role. That would have been very similar to what I was doing before, but for a much better company, with a much better culture, doing stuff that's way more fun than the mining industry, which is what that was the sector that we were serving in the company that I was with before. So I got really, really close on it. And then they decided, I got my first interview. I did the first interview and then I got a second interview, that was going to happen after Christmas in January. And in the 2 weeks in between, they decided, it was a Brazilian based company, that they weren't going to expand into Vancouver in the way that they were planning. And so my role, I said this to Crystal last week when we were talking about it. I was like, I was laid off of that job before I even got it. Like, that's what happened there. That's what it's like out in the world right now.
Yeah.
And so I know, like, January, I was just like, I was kind of in a funk as a result. And I think that Crystal was also like sort of sensing that frustration from me. And so when I said, like, well, what if I did this? I think she was like, well, if you think you can, and you know, like, and you want to, like, you have the drive to do it, then go for it. So her giving me permission was really all I needed. And then yeah, I mean, like, you guys saw the result of it. Like, I went hard in February rebranding everything, and we did all of like the bonus stuff, and February was really fun. The pledge drive was awesome. It was super fun. And I want to make it an annual thing. We're going to do it every year. But then we went into March, and we didn't get the results out of the pledge drive that I wanted. I definitely like it was a positive overall, because a few of you guys came back to the Patreon that had left for various reasons, mostly I think because people's financial situations change, right? That's kind of the primary one, which is really good. Like, when I see the exit surveys on Patreon, that's mostly what it is people are just like, I just can't afford it anymore. It's like, that's fine. Like, I understand. It's very rarely like, this content sucks, or you're not delivering the thing that you
have you ever
promised,
gotten at this content sucks?
Oh yeah.
Really?
In 2020, we lost probably 5% of our Patreon support because we supported Black Lives Matter. But and I mean, like
how dare you?
Hey, nobody's listening to this podcast except for the people who are already probably in the know. I lost a co-host over it, so you know, it's losing the Patreon supporters was not the biggest loss out of all of that. But you know, the BLM thing turned into the Gina Carano thing, and the Gina Carano thing turned into a whole thing, and that blew up. But yeah, so so yes, I have definitely gotten the feedback of like, I thought you were a Star Wars podcaster. Stop bringing politics into Star Wars. And they're like, okay, whatever. I see you later. But all of those people who left, good. We don't want you in the community anyways. But yeah, so overall it was a positive thing, but it wasn't the uptick that I was hoping for. But I mean, being realistic, everybody is in the same position right now. And I totally get that. One of the things that sucks is that of the gains that we did make, we basically lost as many people over the last few months. So everything stayed pretty flat. There's a bit of an uptick. We were hovering around 150, and now we're hovering around 170. So yeah, like, it's, you know, but it is what it is. The other parts of that was just like obviously the decision to go weekly with ThunderQuack was a big thing. I was hoping that, you know, we'd hit the milestone in the pledge drive, and that would be the thing that triggered that, but we did it anyways because I needed to, in order for us to get download numbers up to the point where I could move us over to a platform where we could be ad supported. And ad supported, I know that we did that before with Spreaker, and it was garbage, but I did a lot of research into the different platforms that offer these services, and the one that was going to be the best for us financially in terms of like how much it would cost us versus how much we could make, and then the quality of the ads that would be served, that the ads would be like relevant to the audience and all of that sort of thing. I was comfortable with moving us back to an ad supported model. And so it would have been ad supported episodes, and then Patreon would have been ad free, and then obviously also, you know, all of the other stuff off the record and whatnot. And that may still be in the future at some point, but going weekly with ThunderQuack has not had the uptick that I was hoping for. We haven't been able to hit that milestone, like that number that I need to hit in order to move over to one of those platforms. And as a matter of fact, I think we've actually probably lost a few listeners because of the change in format, a few subscribers, and also the frequency with which we started showing up in people's feeds. I think for some people who were still subscribed, it was like, oh, cool, this podcast is back. I think that for other people, it was like, what is this? And then they listened to an episode, and it wasn't Amanda and I. It was a very different thing, and they unsubscribed. So,
sorry, it's
yeah,
my fault.
No, I mean, like, it just is what it is, right? It's just the nature of it, because we're coming in on a feed that already existed and all of that sort of thing. So the monthly downloads went up because of the fact that we were putting out an episode every week. As a matter of fact, we in April we also put out Off the Record, and so we're putting out 2 episodes a week on the ThunderQuack feed. I still wasn't able to hit that number because the downloads per episode went down. So yeah, it as Joe and I had a long conversation before we started recording, and as I said to him, I'll say the same thing to you guys. In my professional life as a creative director, and working in marketing and product development in software, right, in tech, I had a habit of, you know, any project that I was in charge of or integral in, I would do a 3-month check-in. And at that 3-month check-in, I would like put together a report. This was not something that I was ever asked to do. It was something that I did because it mattered to me. I was sick last week. It was basically the 3-month point. I was in bed and had a lot of time to sit and look at the numbers and look at everything and really assess, like take a good look at it and see if this was going to be a viable thing over the long term for me. And the conclusion that I came to is that it's just not. And podcasting as like a platform and a medium has changed a lot since I started doing this in 2008. And the marketplace is so flooded, it's so competitive, and as much as the people listening to this love the podcast and I love doing the podcast, I it can't compete with, like, that passion doesn't outmatch if, you know, like Ben Schwartz decides tomorrow that, you know, he's gonna do a podcast with all of his famous actor comedian friends, right? I can't compete with it. So the you know what the biggest thing is lately? The trend now is official after shows or like recap shows with the people who starred in the show. If you're going to listen to 3 Star Wars podcasts, are you going to listen to us, or are you going to listen to the people who were in The Mandalorian, you know? Not that they're not doing one, but, you know, like there's a bunch of them now that are like, I can't remember what the last press release that I got was, but I just got one the other day that was like, and it was like these 2, sorry, maybe it's Grey's Anatomy or something, I can't remember, but there was a show that's been, it's not Grey's, because Grey's is still going. It's something that's been like off the air for a while, but they're going back in there. Oh, Suits. It's Suits. That's why it's Grey's adjacent. Same sort of like viewership. Yeah, like two of the stars of Suits are gonna go back and like do commentary episodes, like recap episodes for every episode of the series. Well, I can't put out a Suits podcast now, you know. I love Suits. It's a great show. But like if I put that out, and then I'm competing with them, you know. So yeah, like it's just everything's really changed. And that was something that I think I underestimated maybe, and I so yeah, like the the game plan was one thing, and I executed the game plan. I think it did a pretty good job. I think all of the rebrand stuff that I did is really good. I think the podcasts that we've been putting out have been pretty good, but the numbers have not done what I needed them to do in order to justify all of the work that I've been putting in. And then the other part of it is that like I am exhausted.
Yeah.
Like I am exhausted because when I look at other examples, I brought up Kind of Funny earlier. When they started out, they had 4 people to divvy up the work between. And when it comes to ThunderQuack, most of what is happening behind the scenes, like I would say 95% of what's happening behind the scenes is me. Right. I like when Curtis does a podcast, he handles all of his own editing and posting and social media. That's great. I obviously, Carl and Jason joining with Wampa's Lair, they already had their own stuff going. So I don't have to do very much for them. I help Carl with the graphics. And that was something that I offered to do. But he handles the rest of it. Or between he and Jason, they handle the rest of it. There will be a new episode of Wampa's Lair Spotlight on Patreon, by the way, this week. I'll post it probably later today or tomorrow. But I just to promo them a little bit. And then Saga continues. Kyle, Tim, and Paul, like they do their own thing and they manage their own stuff. And but all of the other stuff on the network, Riverdale Gang did their own thing when they were doing theirs. But all of the other stuff on the network, managing the Patreon, obviously the bonus content on the Patreon, that all goes through me. All of our admin stuff, like our web hosting, our podcast hosting, Zencaster, the thing that we use to record our remote stuff on, like all the stuff, I'm the one who maintains all that stuff and has to deal with all of the tax stuff at the end of the year and blah, blah, all of that stuff. So it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff. There's a lot happening behind the scenes to make podcasts that has nothing to do with recording. And my hope was that scaling it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Scaling it was that big of a deal. Instead of it, doing 3 podcasts in a week being 50% more work, which was sort of what I was expecting, it was 3 times the amount of work. So, doing that much more work and then seeing no return for it, that it just, the math doesn't make any sense. So I did the thing that I would have done at my old job. I did the assessment. I did my 3-month check-in and I looked at the numbers, and then I went to Crystal, who's my boss. And I said, this is the situation. And the recommendation that I would make is to stop. Which hold your horses, everybody. That's not what's happening. We're not like shutting down ThunderQuack or anything. But in terms of it being a business, right? In terms of me doing this as a full-time job, it's not viable. It's not going to generate the revenue in the short term that I need it to. Maybe like over a longer term, if I had 3 years to, put in time and money to this, then that would be something, to wait for it to get to the point where it's self-sustaining. In terms of like paying my bills, it pays its own bills. ThunderQuack pays for itself, but it's not. Still not at the point where I can take any money off of that. It all needs to go back into the costs of running the network. So like that wasn't going to be it. And then the other part of it was that it was burning me out and I was not having fun doing it anymore. The reason why I did the podcast to begin with was for fun. So the thing that makes the most sense for me is to basically like pare it back down to what more or less what it was before. I say more or less because there's a couple of big changes. So I'm going to run through this for everybody And hopefully this doesn't, people don't go like, oh, I just signed up for the Patreon and now you guys are changing everything and now I'm mad. I hope that's not the case. I hope that you guys stick with us and you support us because you like the content that we're making and you believe in what we're doing. But if you feel the need to cancel your Patreon pledge, I also get that. Sorry for the people who did annual ones. You're locked in for a year. I gotcha. Haha. No. I do believe that most of you guys who are supporting us on Patreon are in it to support us, and this is going to be what's best for us as a network for it to continue going. If I tried to keep going at the pace that I'm going at and not making any money off of it, I'll probably end up having a nervous breakdown. So better to stop now where I'm in a good place with it than getting to that point and then it being a real serious problem, right? So this is what's going to happen. ThunderQuack Podcast that you are listening to right now, this is the last episode for a while. I don't know what that means. Probably permanently. That doesn't mean that Joe and I are going anywhere. Joe and I are still going to record on a weekly basis. Obviously, we're still doing Rebel Cells until the end of Bad Batch, and then we'll be doing an episode for each of the two characters being featured in Tales of the Empire. So you have that to look forward to into the middle of May. Hope and I are going to continue doing Way Past Cool. I am going to set that up on its own podcast feed. I will also continue to post it on the ThunderQuack Podcast as well, I think. Just, in the interim sort of thing, but you'll be able to starting with the next episode on Wednesday, you'll be able to find that its own podcast feed. Joe and I are going to do the thing that we would have done here on ThunderQuack on Off the Record. So Off the Record will no longer be solo. It won't just be me. It'll be Joe and I talking about a geeky topic, which will make doing Off the Record a little bit less work for me because you guys, it's a lot of work to fill an hour all by yourself. But most importantly, the place where we are getting the most listeners is Rebel Cells, which makes a lot of sense because it's the longest running of the current podcasts. It's also like it's Star Wars podcasting. That's why most of you guys are here listening to me. Force Perspectives is currently on its own feed. Force Perspectives there was a point in time where I was putting everything out kind of on every feed, every one of the Star Wars feeds. Force Perspectives is going to move off of its own feed onto the Rebel Cells feed. So the Rebel Cells feed is going to become Force Perspectives and Rebel Cells. That means that, when we've got animated stuff, we're going to do regular episodes of Rebel Cells. When Acolyte happens in June, we're going to do regular episodes covering Acolyte. And currently the plan is in between those times, we will have regular episodes of Force Perspectives, which will be the show that Joe and I have been doing. What that has become, which is he and I grabbing a topic and then goofing off about Star Wars for a couple of hours. That is, to me, the best use of our time and energy. I in terms of like what everybody wants to listen to. I'm basing that on numbers, right? So for the Patreon supporters, you're still going to get weekly episodes of Joe and I. We're just going to be talking about Star Wars primarily. But then you will get the other stuff that we would have talked about on Off the Record. If you've been around since Quiver, that's what we used to do. That's what we did. That's what the Patreon used to be. Is Amanda and I would do Quiver, where we would talk about Arrow, and then we would do the ThunderQuack podcast, and that was us talking about the other stuff that we wanted to talk about because we have interests other than the one show that we're there to cover. So we're basically just going back to that kind of a format. So I hope that people are cool with that. This to me is kind of the biggest piece of news on this but also isn't. Like it's the biggest one for me, but it's the least important in terms of like impact. And that is that Perfect 10 is going to go on a temporary hiatus. And my plan right now is to come back in September with new episodes of Perfect 10, but that podcast needs to be retooled. It gets to be retooled because it's the favorite podcast that I record. Like, I love recording Perfect 10. I also think that those episodes are like the best thing that I've done. And those of you who are listening to this probably do listen to Perfect 10. And for that, like, I am so appreciative. But we have episodes of that podcast that have less than 50 downloads in their lifetime. One of those is coming up on the 1-year anniversary of it having been posted. The strike really screwed us over for a bunch of stuff with that podcast, which kind of sucks. But it wasn't doing great before the strike anyways. So it's like it maybe cut our downloads by like 20%, but we're still, that podcast is episodes struggle to get 100 downloads on Perfect 10. I don't know why. And so I need to take a step back from it. I need to worry less about putting out content and more about figuring out what's not working and why that podcast isn't finding the audience that I know that it has, that I know that it deserves. And so I'm going to look at that over the next few months while I refocus my energy on things that make me money and pay my bills and feed my kids. But I'm going to be thinking about Perfect 10 a lot, I promise, and how I can fix whatever is wrong there. I need to do like some serious like assessment and figure it out, but determine what's going on there. That it's not finding an audience, it's not hitting, and then we will come back and we'll do no episodes. So that one, it's not disappearing, it's just taking a break while I figure out what needs to happen. So that'll have a relaunch. Like I said, my plan right now is September. I mean, like, don't necessarily like hold me to it because like I'll procrastinate, but also like don't hold me to it because who knows what happens between now and September. There's a lot that can happen. So that's the plan. That's the plan. So just to reiterate, I'm getting tongue tied because I've been talking for a while. Just to reiterate everything really quickly to go down the list. Perfect 10 on hiatus until September. ThunderQuack Podcast on permanent hiatus. Force Perspectives will be going weekly, moving on to the Rebel Cells feed. And both shows will live on that feed, Force Perspectives and Rebel Cells. Joe and I will figure out, we're going to feel that one out, whether or not we do regular weekly episodes of Force Perspectives no matter what, and then like take on the extra of doing Rebel Cells and, when Acolyte happens and all of that. But I no matter what, there will be something every week on that feed. It will be on Patreon early, so we will maintain our Monday recording schedule. So we'll record on Monday. It'll be out Monday night, Tuesday morning ish, and then out for everybody on. I think it'll probably go back to Friday, because this is less topical than ThunderQuack Podcast. So so it's gonna go to that model. And then Joe and I are going to do Off the Record together. And Way Past Cool, the new Sonic show that we just launched last week. Great timing, right? Is going to move on to its own podcast feed. I mean, like, that one was always intended as a limited run series. So we're doing the 2 Sonic movies that are out right now, the 6 episodes of Knuckles that are coming out, and then in December we'll come back and we'll do Sonic 3 after that movie comes out. I guess technically we'll probably record that in January because it comes out like the week before Christmas. I think it's December 21st. So like, I don't think that we're gonna, I don't know, maybe Hope and I are pretty nuts about Sonic, so maybe we will watch it and then immediately want to record the episode. But that is something to worry about. in December, along with Santa Claus and elves and reindeer. That's very far off. Yeah, so that's the gist of it. And by the gist, I mean everything. That's the whole thing. I was thinking about it, and it's like there are like the cliche things that people say when they are delivering news of this sort, and it's always like, I haven't come to this decision lightly, and most of the time, it like that rings false, and I think the reason why is the reason why it would in this instance. This was not a hard decision for me to make. All I had to do was look at it for more than 5 minutes, and it was like, yeah. And to me, that's always the indicator that I'm going in the right direction. Is that it's like, this doesn't. I'm not regretting this, right? Like I don't feel like, whatever the repercussions of it are, if we lose a couple of Patreon subs, if somebody's upset with me because we said that we were going to do all this stuff and now we're changing course so quickly. I have to I have to stick to my guns on stuff like this, and it's really funny because I obviously I was laid off from this job, but I in my previous job, it drove me nuts that we would put a bunch of work into a project, we would launch it, it wouldn't get supported by the business because we'd be moving on to the next project immediately. And then I would come back to it and I would go like, it's not working, we need to pivot, right? So this is businessy stuff. And the people who made the decisions would be like, no, we're not changing anything, we're not putting any more time into that. And they would just leave it as it was, not working, not functioning, and then a year later come back and go like, why did you guys put all that work into this product that went nowhere? Like they would say that to us as if it was our decision.
Yeah.
And it drove me nuts. It made me so frustrated. And this is not a unique thing to the company that I was working for. This is how the tech world works. And so that's where I, had that policy of like essentially covering my bases of like, listen, I checked in 3 months and I was like, hey, this is not like, there's something wrong over here. We need to address it or shut it down. Right? Like those are your two options. Like when you identify a problem with a product, you have to either fix the problems or shut it down. And it's a cost benefit analysis, right? It's return on investment. I've put 3 months in at this point, and the 3 months that I've put into it at this point, I've learned a great deal about TikTok, which is worth its weight in gold. I have added a bunch of awesome stuff to my portfolio in the ThunderQuack rebrand because it was a really good project. So I had a bunch of like personal goals and stuff like that within that really didn't matter to any of you guys as listeners, but in terms of like my profession as a brand guy, as a designer and an illustrator and all of that, is like I put some like markers of things that I wanted to do and goalposts that I wanted to hit, and I did. So it's really good stuff for my portfolio. So that's worth it for the 3 months that I've put in. And I tried. I did it. Like I tried to do the thing, which is like when I set out to do it, when I came to you, Joe, when I told some other friends and other people in the podcasting world that I was going to do it, it was like, there are other people out there doing this. Why can't I? Right. And so I tried, right? I put the 3 months in, and at the end of the 3 months, the two things that came back to me were, it's something about what I'm doing isn't connecting, isn't clicking. So obviously I have a lot more to learn if I want to do this properly. But I don't want to. Like that's the biggest takeaway. And that's why I don't have any regret in this decision, and I did not come to it lightly, or I did come to it lightly. It was a very light decision. It was a very quick decision. Once I looked at the numbers, it was like, well, I haven't been having fun for the last month. Like April has not been a particularly fun month for the podcast, because it's been very frustrating. It's been a lot of work and not seeing any return on it. Which is like very demoralizing, right? And then like I'm doing so much podcasting that the podcasting that I am doing, I'm kind of grumpy about. And when that happens, the product starts to suffer. And if the product is suffering, then it's definitely not going to go anywhere, right? So so it all, like, this was a super easy decision to make, and super easy conclusions to come to on it. The hardest part of it is Perfect 10, figuring that out,
Mm.
because I don't want to stop that one.
Dude, I love doing that one when I'm on there.
And
It's so fun.
all of my friends and like colleagues in the podcast world say the same thing. And everybody that I have on the podcast, I'm always like, hey, thank you so much for the time. Except for you, Joe. I don't care. You just come on because I tell you to come on.
Thank
But the people who come on as like guests, like one-time guests and that sort of thing, they come on and I'm like, hey, thank you so much for giving me your afternoon. I really appreciate it. And they're like, the thing that everybody says, the feedback that I get unanimously is, oh man, no problem. This was super fun. I was like, oh, okay, cool, awesome. Like, if people are having fun doing the podcast with me, I'm having fun doing the podcast, and the content is good. I got to figure out the part that's missing and the reason why it's not getting the audience that it deserves to have. So, like I said, everything else in this, everything else was a really easy decision to make. Perfect 10 is the one where I'm like, what am I going to do here? How do I sort this out?
Mm.
Yeah. And so it's just like, it is one that I need to take another 3 months, right? Like, I need sort of May, June, July, and then in August I can start, once I think I figured it out. I hope I figured it out in 3 months. Once I have a game plan, August will be the month to start rebuilding it, and then September will be a time to launch it. So, yeah, and then we'll see. We'll give it another go. If you've been with ThunderQuack for any amount of time, you've probably, if you look back at the past, you've seen me do this before. We launched Faster, More Intense as like our live action Star Wars counterpart to Rebel Cells. And I tried a bunch of things with Faster, More Intense, and had, a little bit of success with it, and we had a little bit of fun with it. But then, I sort of like stopped doing it, and then we turned it into Force Perspectives, and I tried something with that. That wasn't working for me. And then Joe, you and I started doing something with it, and it organically turned into the show that it is now.
Mm.
And the show that it is now is super fun to record. You and I think, put out some really, really good content, not to toot our own horns too much, but we are going to. The reason I know that Force Perspectives is the path forward for you and I is how the album art came together. Like that that was not like a brainstorming session or like a conversation or anything. That was like a pure epiphany. Like that coalesced out of nothingness, and is awesome and perfect. And like, when I finished that artwork of you and I as Foden Bede from the Phantom Menace, the podcast, pod race announcers, I do that every time, the pod race announcers, and I looked at it, it was done, and I was like, that's the show. Like, that's the, like, it is like, that's the show. Like, this branding, this image, is exactly what that show is, and allowed me to then like step back from what we had been doing and where it had gone organically, and realize, like, okay, if we just put a little bit of structure around this, like, that's what this show is supposed to be. So that's the reason why that one's the path forward for me, is that like it has occurred naturally. And I think you and I are contributing something worthwhile to the Star Wars community, which is a good reason to do it. Because it needs it. Star Wars fandom is a difficult place to navigate these days. So, yeah, yeah, and then and then us moving to Off the Record feels like a much better fit than what we've been doing with ThunderQuack Podcast on a weekly basis, which is trying to, like, find news topics and stuff that we want to talk about in order to make an episode. But Off the Record being like, we're going to grab this one topic and then we're going to talk about it for about an hour, maybe two, depending on how much we want to go on something, right? That to me is much more the reason why you and I brought back ThunderQuack to begin with. It's just it's going to be behind the paywall. It's going to be a Patreon exclusive for now. One thing, I have not talked to Tim Dipple about pop quiz yet, the Perfect 10 pop quiz, because all of this is sort of coalesced and become the plan in the last like 72 hours. So I haven't talked to him yet. He'll be hearing about this from the podcast first. No, I'll message him before I put the podcast out. He and I'll have a conversation and figure out what that's going to be. But because that's the companion show for Perfect 10. If Perfect 10's on hiatus, is that show also on hiatus? So I'll talk to him about that. But it is one of your guys' Patreon bonuses. So I want to make sure that that's clear, that like I haven't forgotten about it. It's just something that I need to talk to Tim about and figure out what we're going to do there. But we had talked about doing some other stuff during the pledge drive that never ended up happening. But I think maybe we're going to revisit some of those ideas. So Perfect 10 pop quiz might turn into its own show that I think would be a better thing. But like I said, I have to talk to Tim first. How about we do an episode of Off the Record to cap off this final episode? I think this is maybe like the third series finale that that the ThunderQuack podcast has had. Yeah, it's because it's like a talk show ish. I think like this is not an uncommon thing, right? Like, the same name has been used multiple times for certain talk shows. Like right now, I At Midnight is hosted by oh my god, her name just fell out of my head. She's like my favorite comedian right now, so it's terrible that I can't think of her name. Taylor Tomlinson. Oh my god, she's hosting it right now. But At Midnight has been like 3 shows over the years. So ThunderQuack Podcast is the same thing, where it's like it comes back, try and make it a thing, and it doesn't work, and we just cancel it. So let's do Off the Record. We're shifting over to what Off the Record will be from now on, which is Joe and I just grabbing something that we want to talk about. And today, that's gonna be the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer that literally just dropped this morning. That would have been news. It would have been ThunderQuack Podcast news. But we're gonna talk about this. I have just talked for 42 minutes straight.
I mean, that's not that uncommon for you.
Oh no, it's not anything unusual at all. But it is now the point in the podcast where I say I've talked for a long time. Joe, talk for a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I guess I can talk about the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer. Looks cool. I mean, it looks. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of implications. Like the thing that's jumping out to me is kind of the end of the trailer, which with good reason is at the end of the trailer, because they obviously want you to be like, wait a minute. When the two of them are jumping into what clearly seems like one of those sling ring band Doctor Strange portal things.
Yeah.
Where are they going? Are they going to the MCU? There's a lot of MCU little things in here and hints in here, and I'm very excited. I'm very, like, it looks really funny. it like honestly, this is kind of where I wanted Deadpool to be from the beginning. Where
Yeah.
like I understand they were making all of the jokes of like, oh, the bargain X-Men are in his movies because they don't want to put the real X-Men in, and then there's the cameos and everything. But like, it's like, oh, this feels like a real Deadpool X-Men movie. This is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when we got that initial image of Hugh Jackman in the Wolverine costume, I was down for sure,
Mm.
right? I mean, when we got the initial announcement of like it's going to be Deadpool and Wolverine, it was like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, Hugh Jackman's coming back, that's rad. And then we saw them both, suited up together. I was like, okay, I like it's just a costume reveal, but whatever.
Mm.
I like it, I dig it. It's not what I would have done, but I dig it. And then we got the
What?
first.
Well, hold on a minute. What would you have done? Because
Well,
I saw it. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm all in on this.
I'll get there.
Okay. Okay.
We got the first trailer, the teaser, and Wolverine's not in it unless you count the one shot of him from
Yeah.
behind as Patch, right? Which I
Mm.
think we may have talked about on a previous ThunderQuack. But so he wasn't in it, and it was like, okay, well, I don't understand. It's called Deadpool and Wolverine. You guys, like, we know what this is. Just show us Wolverine in the costume, please. I think we got like 2 shots of Hugh Jackman or something like that in that trailer.
Mm.
So they give us this trailer, and this trailer is much more the like, here's the movie. Like this is what the actual movie is. The
No.
teaser did a bunch of the setup, right? Which is that like after Deadpool 2, he seems to have like figured his little found family out and like he's in a good place. And now it's all under threat, right? And so this movie is going to be him figuring out, how do I protect this family that I've put together, these
Mm.
people that I care about, the only reason that I have to live, right? Like the thing that I live for, which I think is great. I love it because it adds so much heart to the character of Deadpool, who is usually sort of this sort of like, Deadpool is treated as a solitary character, but he is always at his best when he's in a team.
Mm.
So to me, it's like this makes so much sense and it works so well. And then like this new trailer is like, here are the two of them working together reluctantly, and this Wolverine going through some sort of a transformation. And so when we first see him, putting together what we can from this new trailer, when we first see him in this bar, he's broken man Wolverine, and then we're gonna see him in the suit with the little wingy hairs.
Mm.
Which looks, I'm gonna be totally honest, looks terrible, but I think it's
What?
supposed to.
No
Oh,
way.
I think it. I don't think
I
that
love it.
I don't think it looks right at all. But the thing is that we've also got that shot of Patch from behind, and that shot of Patch from behind is, it's like the full deal, right? Like it's like majestic Wolverine pointy hair. Whereas like the shot that we get where he's like in the suit and he's got the wingy hair, it looks like he's just like got some hair out of place.
Mm.
But where they got me, where it's like, okay, we are building, this Wolverine is not in the place at the beginning of this movie that we want him to be, but he will be there by the end of this movie.
Mm.
And the reason why I say that is because like about halfway through the trailer, we see Wolverine coming out from behind something and his suit is in tatters and his hair is mussed up. It's not, he doesn't have the little wingies anymore. Like he kind of does, but it's like kind of more like, he's been through the ringer, right?
Mm.
And the sleeves are ripped off. And Hugh's glorious, just massive. My God, like just, yeah, 2 tickets to the gun show, please. On full display. And I'm like, okay, we get there. We get to him looking the way that he's supposed to look by the end of this movie. And so yeah, like I mean, like I would, like, listen guys, I was all in. You guys know I'm all in. It's an MCU thing. I'm all in every time. It's not until after I've seen it that I'll be like, maybe this one wasn't a great idea. But I'm always like enthusiastic and hopeful for these. But with this, I mean, like, it's Ryan Reynolds returning to Deadpool. He wouldn't do it if it wasn't going to be worthwhile. I think that he learned his lesson with Green Lantern. And that's why he's like an executive producer on these movies and has a lot of say in, you know, what happens story wise and all of that. I think this is going to be a big part of them like saving what they love about the existing X-Men franchises. I in the midst of everything else that's going to happen with the X-Men and the MCU. In the lead up to and in the result of Secret War. So, for those who have not been paying any attention to what I've been saying, I will also note that X-Men 97 was added last week on Disney Plus to the multiverse saga, the MCU multiverse saga. So on Disney Plus, there are like these different sort of like tracks in the Marvel section of like, you can watch this in chronological order, you can watch it in release order, or like, here's all of the Infinity Saga in the order that you should watch it. Here's the multiverse saga in the order that you should watch it. And currently X-Men 97 sits at the end of the multiverse saga on that list.
Don't pat yourself on the back too hard about that one, Mike.
But this is the week after, and okay,
I know. You just said it. I know.
X-Men 97 spoilers,
repeated
right?
it. Yeah.
X-Men 97 spoilers for people who haven't watched the 5th episode. But this is a small one. We're not the episode itself. Something major happens in that episode, like a major climactic, what we would call from the Spider-Verse movies, a canon event in the X-Men universe is about to happen. And right before it does, there's a shot where sort of an establishing shot. It's on the stars and it's going to pan down to the location. And as it does, the Watcher from What If is imposed on the background, right? Like he's in the way that he shows up in that show. And the deal is with the Watcher is that the Watcher only shows up when something major is about to happen. I like, that's sort of his deal, is that like if he is shown in the Marvel comics, unless it's a story specifically about the Watchers, right? But this one in particular is Uatu. He was only going to be shown in the way that he was shown right before something that's like a major event that's going to be a turning point in the Marvel universe. Now, what that has come to mean in the MCU in terms of What If is these are events that go on to affect the multiverse and are in the 2 seasons that we've gotten so far, and we've got a season 3 coming probably later this year, if not, early 2025. They are generally like multiversal incursions, right? So like things that are going to characters from one multiverse ending up in another multiverse, and that affecting a timeline in an adverse way, or affecting the fabric of the multiverse in an adverse way, right? That's sort of like Uatu as a character has kind of become synonymous with that in relation to the MCU, because What If is canon to the MCU timeline, right? What this meant when that episode aired, and what I said immediately after that episode, is that like, this is confirmation of what I've been saying since before X-Men 97 even started airing. When they announced it, basically, I was like, oh, okay, this is how they're going to bring the X-Men into the MCU. That's what this is. There's no other reason to put the effort and the energy into reviving X-Men, like the animated series, if it's not part of your overall plan, right? They confirmed that for me when I saw Uatu in that shot. They double confirmed it for me last week when they put it on the MCU timeline playlist, right? Or not timeline, in the multiverse saga playlist. It like, that is that those 2 choices are there for people like us who are paying attention and want to draw conclusions from it. Now, I'm saying this with like, I'm going to say right now, like a 90% certainty. I'm pretty sure about this. Like that this is that these things are going to go on to affect other things. And it's going to be important in the MCU, into how the X-Men end up in the MCU. I still don't have anything to support my theory that the Beast and Photon that we see at the end of the Marvels have anything. It's not Photon. What's that character's name?
I have no idea.
Photon is Monica Rambeau. Maria Rambeau in that scene is another character. I can't remember right now, but I still assert that that those are the X-Men 97 live action X-Men 97 characters. And that by the end of X-Men 97 season 2, we might even see like that scene in animated form to make it really clear that like these two things are connected, because I believe that scene is in the Marvels, because the next time that we see Monica Rambeau will be in Secret War along with Beast and whatever other X-Men have survived to that point and make it into Secret War. At this juncture, I am going to say Wolverine's not one of them. I don't think that Wolverine's going to make it out of X-Men 97. I think he will be fine this season. I think next season, I think they did a really smart thing with X-Men 97, and as Wolverine is a background character in this show right now. I think that's going to change in the next 3 episodes because we're going to like it's the 3 parts to finish off the season.
That starts this week is the finale.
Part 1,
3-parter.
Part 1 of 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. I think that Wolverine will start to take more of a central role in light of recent events. And we will talk all about this at some point, probably after the finale. We'll do like a whole come back and like spoiler cast sort of thing for X-Men 97. But I think he'll start to take more of a central role. But I think that'll be a lead into season 2, where I think that Wolverine will be integral. But I think that he'll be integral in a lead up to an ultimate sacrifice. And I think I'm on that track. I was already on that track that like they're saving Wolverine for next season because they wanted to give the other X-Men their day in the sun that they have deserved for a long time. I posted on Twitter yesterday. It's wild to have lived through an era like our generation has specifically lived through this point in time where it's like in the 90s it was widely accepted, no debate, the X-Men are the best heroes in the Marvel universe. Right? They're the best team by far. They're better than the Avengers. They're better than the Fantastic Four. They're better than any of these other teams. Like who cares about any of these other teams? And their individual heroes, Cyclops, Wolverine, Gambit, Jubilee, Rogue, Psylocke, right? Like these characters are among the best characters in the entire Marvel Comics pantheon, right? It's like I think the only character at that point in time in the 90s that outshone anybody on the X-Men was Spider-Man. Right? And Spider-Man is the guy. Spider-Man is Marvel. Like he's right. the cream of the crop. He's the king of the hill, and I don't think that'll ever change. But we lived through that like that was like our era coming up, right? And then that shifted into, at the time when they started these revolutionary X-Men live action movies, but those characters were very watered down, lukewarm versions of the characters that we knew from the cartoon series and the comic books, right? The topics were not as clear. The storylines were muddled and mixed together, and the focus became Wolverine, right? But we have now, with X-Men 97, swung all the way back to the X-Men proper, people recognizing in a day and age where now like Cap and Iron Man and Thor and the Hulk, like the core members of the Avengers, have like taken the spotlight from Spider-Man and the X-Men. Well, Spidey's back on top, but don't worry about that. But in an era where that has happened, which I don't think anybody could have seen in the 90s, even in the early 2000s, the X-Men come back in with X-Men 97, and in the last month have, like, I think reminded Marvel fans who the real like kings and queens of this franchise are. It feels so good. I mean, last week's episode focused on Storm was just like
It was awesome.
exquisite.
It
It
was
was so good.
awesome.
Like, and I mean, people have probably seen this on social media. I won't spoil any of like the story points why, but like the new costume being the old costume, right? Like being her original costume. It's just like, yeah, they are nailing it to such a degree with X-Men 97. And they know they've got a good thing with Deadpool. They know they've got a good thing with Hugh Jackman. I think that I think that the goal right now for Feige is how do we launch the X-Men in the MCU in the best possible way, in the strongest position. And if I'm thinking as a producer, I'm thinking as a creative story strategist, which is what his job is, and how we execute that story to get the most butts in seats, but in a way that we can go anywhere. To me, I look at it and I go like, Deadpool goes on a multiversal adventure to grab Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, but not the one from the movies that we all have problems with. A new one, which is what they did with Logan, right? Like Logan is not that Wolverine is not the Wolverine from the Bryan Singer movies. Bryan Singer can rot in hell. Anytime I say his name, same with Joss Whedon, he can rot right next to him. The two of them have a love seat reserved. They're terrible people. The like that stuff has nothing to do with Logan, and I think they want to repeat that. They want to do that again, right? Of like, here's a Wolverine. He's not the Logan Wolverine because that Wolverine has a button on that story, and it's a great story. It's fine. Leave it as it is. And then we've got the Bryan Singer stuff. We've got the rebooted stuff. It's not any of that either. Like I firmly believe it's not going to be any of that either. This is like this Wolverine. We're going to get his whole backstory. We're going to get the whole thing, and obviously it's going to pull from all of that because it's all pulled from the same source material. So there's going to be a lot of like similarities because that's how the multiverse works. But he will be a unique version. And they will, but like he will be the version that I think that we've all been asking for a really long time. And seeing him in the tattered suit with the sleeves ripped off, but he's still got like the shoulder pads, and he's still got the gloves. It's like it's very strategic how his suit gets ruined, right? It's perfect. And him looking all gruff and grizzled and grumpy and hunched over, like he looks so perfect. And Hugh Jackman, we know, can do the character justice, so that's not a problem. We're gonna throw him and Ryan Reynolds Deadpool, and I'll bet you anything that there are other characters jumping through that portal that we haven't seen yet. But it's gonna be like getting these characters in there, and that's going to be. I think that this movie will end off. Deadpool and Wolverine will end off at the beginning of Secret War. I like that. Like that's the logical place, and the Doctor Strange that's pulling them through will probably be I one of the what if multiverse Doctor Stranges. I mean, Multiverse of Madness also gave us a bunch of Doctor Stranges, but it won't be our Doctor Strange. I don't think. It might be. It might be the MCU Doctor Strange. We'll know if he's got three eyes. But yeah, but his movie ended and he was supposed to go off on another adventure, and we haven't seen anything from that yet. So we'll see there. But yeah, I think that we're gonna finish this off with Secret War, and it's gonna be like that. They will be one of the teams, because Secret War I think is going to play a lot the way that Infinity War did. Of like we're gonna have like these, like all the characters get sort of like grouped off into these chunks, and then go off on these separate missions, and then they'll all come back together in a second part, like Endgame. I think they're gonna try and repeat it, but yeah, so there'll be them, and then there will be Monica Rambeau with the remaining members of the X-Men 97 X-Men, who might be people returning to the role that we've seen before. It might be characters being recast. But I do think like that'll be one of the teams that goes into Secret War. And then obviously we'll have like a core, like our current Avengers in the MCU, which I would peg as like Thor, Shang-Chi. I think they probably want Ironheart, but I don't know if they're going to get there with that character because we haven't heard anything about that show. But there will be an Iron Man-ish character, whether it's Ironheart or War Machine or somebody, right? Something will happen in Armor Wars, which is a movie that's supposed to come out at some point. Yeah, we'll have Anthony Mackie as Cap, and probably like Winter Soldier, probably Yelena as well, like from the Thunderbolts showing up in that, right? And Hulk. Well, I don't think Mark Ruffalo has any intention of not being in the MCU anytime soon. The other thing that I think that we have to note if we're talking about Secret War and we're talking about all of these things, I'm speculating wildly on these plans, is that Robert Downey Jr. said like last week, apparently, that he will return as Iron Man. Like he's open to it. And the second that he said that, he's not going to say that. Robert Downey Jr. is not going to say that and put that out into the universe if he hasn't already talked to Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
So Iron Man is in. He is in. Okay. He is definitely in Secret War.
Mm.
This is the thing. He is definitely in Secret War. He is probably in Ironheart. And I think it might be one of the reasons why it's disappeared. They haven't talked about it. And I think that they're going to reshoot stuff. Because I think what they're going to do is in the comics, it's Riri, right? That's the character, right? She builds an AI. She builds her own Jarvis. And it's based on Tony Stark. So I think that what we wanted to happen in Spider-Man, right? Because I think that was what a lot of us were pushing for in Far From Home, is that when he built the new suit, that the AI inside the new suit would be Tony. That it was like in the glasses and everything. That didn't pan out. That didn't happen. And now I don't think that that's going to be a part of the Spider-Man sort of storytelling going forward. Yeah, I don't think he'll have AI in his new suit. So I think that it'll be Ironheart. She'll have she'll have found like it already, like the story is already written, right? Because at the beginning of Civil War, he's got the thing and it's attached to his head, and he's like, I'm using this to like go through my replay through my memories. And it's like, oh, so Tony Stark's entire personality is uploaded to a Stark server somewhere. She's gonna find it and she's gonna put it into her suit. And so it will mostly be him coming back as a voice. It will
That's kind
mostly
of cool.
But I think that we will see like an AI projection of Tony Stark. And it'll be like, and there will be like a thing of like at some point in that story and some point in that series, or maybe they're going to turn it into a movie or something. I don't know. But at some point in that story with Ironheart, we will see an Iron Man suit of armor, right? Like we will like an actual Iron Man one that is being piloted by the ghost of Tony Stark. Like I guarantee it. I guarantee it, you guys. At some point we will see that in the MCU with Robert Downey Jr. saying that he's open to return as the character. I think we will see an alternate version of Tony Stark in Secret War as well. I think I think the best thing for them to do would be to do a superior Iron Man, right? Like to have him as maybe not quite a good guy, maybe even in league with whoever the bad guy is for Secret War. I think it would be really, really cool for the bad guys in Secret War, like for the people pulling all of the strings, to be the Illuminati, and for them to do a riff on that. They kind of did that with Multiverse of Madness, right? Like they kind of had that thing. But I think it would be really cool to bring him back as Superior Iron Man, to bring Patrick Stewart back in as Xavier again, but like asshole Xavier. The real Xavier, the one from the comic books. The one from the comic books is not a good dude. As a matter of fact, actually, you know, if you're gonna do that, I think you do it with McAvoy. Because I think if you did it with McAvoy and he's got the beard, if you gave him the big stupid X helmet that he has in the comics right now, do you know the one that I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's like the Cerebro helmet thing, and he's in like the
Yeah.
all black outfit. If you brought back McAvoy as that version of the character, as part of the Illuminati in Secret War, along with Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, and you have Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, and you've also got Pedro as Mr. Fantastic in the same story, but they're like, but like the thing about the Illuminati, who am I missing on this? Namor, right? Is he the other one?
Yeah.
And we have
Right?
a Namor,
Namor
right?
Xavier.
Those are the four in the comics.
Yeah, Tony's not in that, right? No.
I thought he is, isn't he? Yeah, I
Wait,
thought
he is. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
Okay.
It's Iron Man, Mr. Fantastic, Professor Xavier, and Namor. They're like the four
Okay.
Illuminati controlling everything, right? In the original Illuminati comics. I think if you like put together that team, because where's Namor? This is my thing with the MCU. There have been so many awesome things in the last little while, and then these characters have like disappeared.
Mm.
And it drives me nuts. Shang-Chi has been in his one movie. And that is such an injustice to us as MCU fans. He needs to show up in a post-credit scene sometime soon. In one of these shows or something, man. He's got to show. Like, we need to see Simu in the MCU again sooner rather than later. But everything got messed up, right? The pandemic, the strike, as well as Jonathan Majors turning out to be a trash human being.
Yeah.
That's gonna get away with it, by the way. You know, no jail time.
Wait, what?
I think that was the thing, right? Is that he's
I'm not about cancel culture in general, but like in this instance, I'm pretty okay with him not returning to the role.
Oh no, he's not returning to the role. He's out. He's not coming.
No,
back
I know.
to the MCU.
I'm saying like if something, at the very least, like I'm not okay with his victims not getting justice, but I'm happy for the most part that I don't have to see a movie that he's in again.
Yeah.
Like it's a small victory. I don't think it's the victory I would have chosen, but at least it's something.
I think he'll go away for 5 years and then he'll come back and
oh God, I hope not. That apology tour crap.
Yeah. I've done a lot of work on myself.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. It's like Mel Gibson getting to be in things. So annoying. But I think those three things really, really mess things up because I can't think of anybody's names today. The director of Shang-Chi was going to direct Kang Dynasty, and then he dropped from it. I think because of the Jonathan Majors stuff, and then they dropped Jonathan Majors, but they've now said that Avengers 5 no longer has the Kang Dynasty subtitle. It's going to be something else, which like I think that they're just accelerating. I've said this before. I think they're just accelerating all of the
Secret Wars stuff.
The Secret Wars stuff.
Yeah.
I think they're just going to get there faster. I think if anything in the last month has been proven, it is that the X-Men need to be brought into the MCU as fast as possible. It has taken too long already. And
it's crazy when you think about it, right?
Yeah,
like
how long they've had access to these characters and how long and the fact that it is not the first thing that they put into production. The thing is that like this is my thing, guys. It is. That's how long it takes to do animation like this. And so there is a long game here, and Kevin Feige is good at the long game. He is good at the long game. Short game, not as much sometimes. Sometimes it comes up a little bit wanting. And we're in that phase right now with the MCU that we were in at the beginning of phase 2 with the Avengers, right? Like we came off the like people will act like they loved these movies now, but when they came out, Thor and Captain America were like panned by critics and by fans. A lot of people were like, this isn't going to work. They're going to turn these guys into the Avengers. That Thor movie's terrible, right? Like, people are like, oh, this Thor movie's so boring. And then the Captain America came out. They were like, I don't know who's asking for this, right? Like, people did not act like those movies were great movies at the time. I don't think anybody's like walking around saying that Thor is, but there's a lot of revisionist history on Chris Evans as Captain America. There's a lot of people going around like, oh, he's the best Cap. Like, who else would you get? And it's like, really? Because a lot of you people said some real nasty things in the lead up to that movie and immediately after its release about him as Captain America and how you didn't believe him as the character. And now it's like people can't think of anybody else, and they can't think of Chris Evans as anybody else. I think it's been a bit of a problem for him in the last couple of years since he left that role. So like we went through those growing pains, Ant-Man and Age of Ultron was not particularly well received. Like there have been periods in the MCU where, things have not, people have been like, is this the end of it? Superhero fatigue. And then Civil War came out, and then Infinity War and Endgame, and some great movies in between those. and people shut up. So and then they get their revisionist history and they're like, I thought this was all great from the beginning. I've always been a fan. It's like, really? Because you've got tweets that say otherwise. But yeah, I think that we're just in one of those periods right now, and I think that it sucks because of the sort of the external circumstances of it, right? Of the pandemic and the strike and other things that have really like thrown things off course. But the X-Men, I think, are the one piece that Feige has actually like executed according to plan at the moment. And that's, I mean, Deadpool, I think, is coming out a little bit later than they wanted it to, but not by a ton, only by like a quarter, right? Like a fiscal quarter. So, I mean, I think that they probably would have put Deadpool into production sooner if not for the pandemic. But uh, yeah, like I think that these are going to be a good 1-2 punch of X-Men 97. I think by the end of the season we will have like an in-show, like in-universe, full-on confirmation of like multiverse stuff is about to happen. Like these X-Men are about to step into a larger world, and I think part of that is that we're going to see this world's version of the Avengers at some point. We know from the season teaser, like from the second half of the season teaser, that Cap or a Cap is going to show up. Somebody with Captain America's shield is going to show up. And the rumor has been that Doctor Strange is going to show up, and I think that like this is going to be like a something has gone horribly wrong, right? Like from that 5th episode, it's gonna, like, somebody is going to be like, this actually isn't the way that things are supposed to go. Right? Because one of the things, not to get into spoilers too much, but it being 1997, right, for these X-Men, the storyline that happened to them in the 5th episode is from comics from like the mid to late 2000s. I don't know exactly when. It's from the Grant Morrison run, right? So it's like, I think that was like mid to late 2000s, right? So it is happening sooner in this timeline than it's supposed to, if you take the 616 as like the prime timeline, right? As like the main, as like the template for what it's supposed to be. And I think that's going, I think it's gonna come back, and it's gonna be like, well, because it happened here and because of the things that happened during it, things are going to unfold in a way that now put the multiverse in jeopardy, right? And so yeah, we're gonna start to get that. And I don't think that season 2 will necessarily be about that, but I think there might be a what if episode in the future, in season 3, that ties into X-Men 97. And I think that this might be one of the ways that they set it up, but that's pure speculation. I have nothing to back that up. That's just me like spitballing, but
I would be cool if it is.
Yeah, I do believe that they are going to like tie all of these things together. Like that's how I think they're going to start to do it. Is I think that we'll get a What If. I think that we'll get a character from X-Men 97 showing up in What If season 3, because season 1 and season 2 have both sort of followed this pattern of like stories that don't seem to be connected, that it turns out that they are connected, and then a team sort of comes together that has to deal with whatever this overarching threat is. And I think that season 3 will do the same thing, but I think that season 3 will be the lead in to whoever the bad guy is in Secret War.
Is there an X-Men movie like on the docket yet? Or is that like, no, we're going to introduce them first and then we'll announce the X-Men movie?
I want to say that in like 2020 or 2021 that they did a timeline that
I thought
had
so.
X-Men on it.
I thought
MCU
so, but I haven't heard anything about it.
Timeline X-Men. It showed up at some point on one of these X-Men. MCU Phase 6 and 7 titles might have leaked, including MCU's X-Men reboot. Let me take a look at this article. Big X-Men surprises that will follow Secret Wars. Like, this is the thing. This is what they've been talking about forever, is that like the X-Men are a post-Secret War thing. What do you got here for me? No, you just have X-Men November 2026 X-Men, but that's not where we're at now, because things got delayed by the strikes. So because November of next year I think is I think it's Avengers upcoming MCU releases. Just give me the actual releases. Deadpool and Wolverine. Agatha Coven of Chaos is supposed to be later this year. Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is supposed to happen sometime this year, which is the animated Spider-Man thing.
Wasn't there like another animated show that was supposed to come out for Spider-Man? And like it just didn't? It was like freshman year or something?
Yeah, that's what this is. Yeah.
Oh, they just changed the name?
Currently, I think it's supposed to. They're calling it Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man.
Okay, sure, sure.
But yeah, but it is, and I think initially freshman year was supposed to be, sorry, a prequel to Homecoming. But I think that they might have pivoted, and it might be its own thing now.
Okay, sure.
We've got Brave New World in February, which is the new Cap movie. Thunderbolts in May. Fantastic Four in July. Blade is currently on the slate for November 7th, 2025. I don't think that this is happening because I don't think that they've even started shooting this movie yet. And then Daredevil Born Again is supposed to be sometime next year. I think that's coming sooner than that. I think that we're getting Daredevil at the end of this year. Ironheart, is still on the list for next year. And Kang Dynasty is May 1st, 2026. So I guess it's Blade is currently in that November spot for next year, which was supposed to be, what was I saying there? Like an X-Men movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Secret Wars is May 7th, 2027. I don't think that they're waiting that long. We've got What If season 3. It doesn't have a date yet, but I think it'll be end of the year this year. Wonder Man, they just wrapped shooting, and it's scheduled for next year. This article says it's undated, but that just happened. Eyes of Wakanda, I think it's like a spin-off animated series about Wakanda.
Oh, okay.
But we don't know when that is. Armor Wars, we have no idea when that's going to be. It was going to be a Disney Plus series, but they took it out and retooled it, and it's going to be a movie. Marvel Zombies is apparently a thing that's in the works.
Oh.
There's a Nova project as well that we don't know anything about. Vision Quest, which all we've ever heard is a title, but we don't know what's happening with that, which is about the fake Vision, the white Vision from the end of WandaVision. yeah, that's everything. That's everything that I think that we know about right now. I don't know. We've got a D23 this year, so we'll have a better idea in August of what the next
Mm.
couple of years are going to look like, or at least what they say
That's
they're
in
going to look
August? Why do I remember D23 always being in December?
like. No, you're thinking of Disney Plus Day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, D23 is almost always in August,
Okay.
I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, 2024. The 2024 event is August 9th, 10th, and 11th, 2024 in Anaheim, California.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we'll get a bunch of answers by that point, but then it'll all change and it
Right.
won't matter. So, but yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine looks good.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
gonna go see
excited.
it.
I'm genuinely excited for it. There aren't too many movies this year that, because like, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are movies this year that look cool and I want to see, and
Yeah.
like, I'll probably wait for home release because while I do love going to the theater, I am just being a lot more careful with my money in general lately.
Yeah.
Um, but there aren't a lot of movies that I care enough to go to the theater to see, but this is one of them, I think.
Yeah,
This
I'm
is what I
very
want to go
excited
see.
for it.
Yeah,
I think
looks
it's
cool.
gonna be a good one. I mean, we saw a ton of things in this trailer and a bunch of them connecting it obviously to the MCU, which we already knew was going to happen. But yeah, like we see the corpse of Ant-Man at one point.
Yes.
On Ant-Man, we should say. We see the Void from season 1 of Loki, and I think we see the what's that creature called? The thing that like devours everything inside the Void. I can't remember what it was
I
called.
don't remember.
The big purple cloud
The
monster.
the thing that almost ate the Millennium Falcon and Solo during the
Yeah,
Kessel Run.
yeah. I and then people are saying like that they've seen like Azazel, Toad, and Lady Deathstrike in the trailer as well. I need to go
Oh,
back over it. Sort
like
of.
Ray Park Toad, or
I doubt it. I don't think that Ray Park is allowed to be in movies anymore.
Mm,
Um, this is the thing. People will be like cancel culture, and I know we already talked about that with Jonathan Majors, and it's like I don't know. Cancel culture is this thing of like it's not cancel culture. These are just consequences.
yeah.
Ray Park's place in the film industry was tenuous at best previous to him doing the things that he did. Because it was like, well, is it a character that never speaks or has one or two lines? I guess we can bring him in for it. I guess that's acceptable because he'll do like the flippy things, right? And if we give him like a stick, he'll twirl it around. Because we really need a person to do some flips and twirl around a stick. Yeah. People act like there aren't other people who can do stunts. Like Ray Park is the only person who's ever done stunts. Not to get off on a wild tangent. This is for a different podcast entirely. But it was recently said that and I think it might have been Leslie Headland who said it. Not 100% sure. But somebody on the production for Acolyte was like, our goal was to top the fight, the Darth Maul fight in Phantom Menace, right? Which I think is a great thing to say, right? Our goal, our like high watermark that we looked at when we did our choreography was to exceed what a lot of people consider the best lightsaber duel in the saga, right? I think that that's a totally fine thing to say, and that, but then the regular crowd had to get on their Twitter soapboxes and be like, "You can't, man, unbelievable! I can't believe that they would say this. This is like they're acting as if the Phantom Menace is like scripture." Right. And that this is like blasphemy to say that something could be better than it's like, well, it's the best until something else does it better. And to be perfectly honest, I think that there are better fights than that fight. I think it's a very good fight. You can go and you can listen to Force Perspectives where we ranked all of them. And I don't think Phantom Menace ended up at number 1, did it? What was our number 1?
I honestly don't remember. I don't think it did though.
Yeah, it I don't think it was Phantom Menace, but it'll be so funny if I bring this up right now and it's like, nope, it was Phantom Menace.
It was totally Phantom
Yeah,
Menace.
there isn't a better one than that.
My opinion on like ranking stuff changes every week.
Yeah,
It's anytime I rank something, I always try to give the disclaimer. Yeah, this is my opinion right now.
we have it ranked as third on Force Perspectives.
Okay.
We have Luke and Vader on Bespin as number 1, and Luke and Vader on the Death Star.
Yeah, okay.
Second Death Star is number 2.
That makes complete sense to me.
And then the Maul fight on Naboo, and then the fourth one is Rey and Kylo versus the Praetorians in The Last Jedi.
Mm.
And then Obi-Wan versus Anakin on Mustafar. That's 5. That's our top 5.
All right. Okay.
And I still feel very confident about that. That's a good top 5.
I think it's very fair. I
Yeah.
think it's a fair ranking.
So go listen to Force Perspectives, because that's a good episode.
Now that we just told you what's gonna win.
Yeah. It's the journey, not the destination. Yeah. But somebody said that, and I was just like, I thought like this is a totally reasonable thing to say, is that like when we were designing these fights, we wanted to make fights that were even better than the best fights.
Why wouldn't you want your work to be better than the thing that's the best? Why wouldn't you aim high?
Yeah. And then when somebody asks you like, how are the lightsaber fights in this? Like, how's the stunt choreography in this? You're like, well, our goal was to exceed this, and like, I don't think that they said we did a fight that's better. I think they said like, our goal was to exceed that. And it's like, yeah, awesome.
How dare you?
So I'm going to watch the show and I'll let you know. Right. Like, I don't know. I think it's a very high watermark. I don't know if they will exceed it, but they're also talking a lot about like, it's very like there's a lot of martial arts stuff in it. But yeah, that's to bring it back to like the whole Ray Park thing. It's like Ray Park is very good at the spinny kicks and twirling the stick. He's very good at those things. I'm being reductive, but he is not the only person on the planet who is very good at those things, right? Like there are lots of people who are very good at those things, and I'll actually wager there are people that are better at those things. Some of those people who might be as good or better are probably better actors than he is. One of them might actually be a little kid in the live action Avatar. He does a lot of spinning a stick around and kicky flips and stuff. He's a very talented martial artist, this kid, and he's also a very, very good actor. He's very good in the live action Avatar. But I'm going to wrap that there, because when you and I do Off the Record next week, we're going to talk about Avatar The Last Airbender, because we were supposed to do Perfect 10 and talk about it, but we're not going to now because Perfect 10's on hiatus. So we're going to talk about it. We'll talk about it next week on Off the Record. But this week's Off the Record, I have already decided is Bluey, and it'll be my last solo one. And I'm going to get all emotional and talk about Bluey on that one. But that'll be out tomorrow for people on Patreon. If you're a Patreon listener listening to this the day that it came out. Podcasting is outside of time and space, so none of it actually means anything. That's it for this episode of the ThunderQuack Podcast, which means like that's it for the ThunderQuack Podcast.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap on the ThunderQuack Podcast. Before we do peace out on this iteration of the ThunderQuack Podcast, really quickly, I just want to say thank you first and foremost to you, Joe, for being game to just do whatever I tell you we're gonna do.
Yeah, man. That's part of, I think part of being a good friend is when your friend has an idea that they care about. It's you just back them up.
Well, I appreciate that you are that person.
It's been my pleasure.
It's also nice that you're that person, and that you're a good person to have on a podcast.
Thank God.
I have other people who back me up on these things, but I would never invite them on the podcast. And they wouldn't want to come on. My wife is probably number one on that list.
I
Where
would
it's like,
love to be on an episode with Crystal. That would be awesome.
you know, she's done a couple, and whenever she does, I'm always like, I really wish that you liked doing this. I really wish that Crystal liked doing podcasts, because if she did, it would be very easy to just do podcasts with my wife. But yeah, she does not. It's always difficult to get her to sit down and do it, and then I but thank you. I'm also going to say thank you to my wife, who supported me and said go for it when I had a silly idea that was worth pursuing. And then thank you to everybody that supports us, whether you're a listener or a Patreon supporter or whatever. If you've been around for multiple years, especially, and stuck with us through a lot of ups and downs over the last few years, as I've tried to figure out what the heck I'm doing with this podcast network, it would be very easy. It would actually be a lot easier to just like shutter the whole thing and walk away, than it is to do what I do, which is to try and figure out how can I best serve the people who show up week after week, while maintaining my own sanity and putting out something that I'm proud of. So I do it because of the people who listen week after week. So if you're one of those people, and you guys know who you are, and you know that I know who you are, and I'll see you on the Discord for the most part. But there are other people as well that aren't on the Discord, but everybody should be on the Discord. We have an awesome Discord server.
Shout out to everyone from the Discord. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, thunderquack.com/discord to join us over there. It doesn't cost anything, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know about Discord. Like Discord costs nothing. It can, like, you can spend a bunch of money on Discord if you want to, but it's not necessary to come hang out with us and talk about nerdy things. You guys are the best. But especially everybody who does support us on Patreon. And normally I'm like diplomatic and sort of like careful about, I don't want to like single out the Patreon supporters as being better than the non-Patreon supporters, because I know that there are people who would like to support us on Patreon that can't. But the people who can and do, it's so important, and it is the key motivating factor to continuing to keep going and doing this stuff, because me doing this stuff and then you guys supporting me allows me to support my friends in the shows that they want to do, and that is really important to me, that I be able to make sure that people who want to do podcasts have a really easy, frictionless, seamless way to do it, because some of my friends who do podcasts probably wouldn't do them if I hadn't set stuff up and made things really easy for them, so that they can just show up, record, edit, and post their podcast. They don't have to worry about anything else. So yeah, I thank you for all of that. Thank you for everything over the last few months as we figured this out. We're about to do another major pivot, and hopefully this is the last one for a little while. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in another 3 months, because that's how I measure things, guys. We'll go another 3 months and I'll look at it and go, was that a good idea? And if it was, we'll keep going. And if it wasn't, what you'll notice is that if it was a good idea, nothing will change. We'll just keep going. If it was a bad idea, there will be another episode of a podcast like this one where I explain that I have to figure everything out again. So stay tuned. That's entertaining, if nothing else. I don't know. I think that's interesting to listen to me slowly unravel as a human being running this podcast network. That's it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for supporting us at patreon.com/thunderquack. If you want to continue listening to Joe and I talk about random nerdy stuff, not just Star Wars, then that's going to be the best place to go do it. But don't worry, because we'll tell you all about it every time we sit down to record something else on one of those other feeds. Make sure you're subscribed over on the Rebel Cells feed. So just go into whatever podcast service. It's everywhere, and just search up Rebel Cells. It's cell with one L, like an animation cell.
Mm-hmm.
But
You're
Rebel
so
Cells,
clever.
the Star Wars animation podcast. I subscribe over there, and you'll get Force Perspectives as well as Rebel Cells and whatever other Star Wars stuff Joe and I do in the future, of which there will be a plethora, because we're huge Star Wars nerds. And here's the other thing. I am refocusing my efforts on my art business and design stuff. If you have any graphic design stuff that you need, let me know.
Yeah.
Because I am around to design logos, websites, brochures, posters, whatever you need. If you need any illustration services, or you know anybody that does, I am also around for that. Arkwulf.com, ARKWULF is the best place to go and get my contact information. And that's going to undergo a massive overhaul in the next little bit, as well as I refocus that business. Right now it's like a portfolio website. It's like my resume and portfolio, but it'll make a little bit of a shift in the next couple months. But in the meantime, if you know anybody who needs any of that stuff, you guys know where to find me on social media as well. Archangel Wolf. So,
And you took a moment to pat me on the back. I have to take a moment to pat you on the back. Mike, like, you have leveled up so hard, especially in like the past couple of years, especially this past, period where you focused more on doing more artwork and creative endeavors and stuff like that. Man, the past year especially, I've noticed not that you didn't already have that high quality of work, but I've really noticed, like, wow, the level up on your part has been very consistent over the past, I would say, year, maybe even more than that. So I will piggyback what Mike is saying. Seriously, if you have any of those needs, any creative needs, hit him up. Check out his work if you have not already. He's your guy. He's your go-to guy.
I appreciate that. I'll tell you one thing. One of the main things that's in my plan for the next little while is that whatever I rebrand my illustration and design business as, it will be the main sponsor of ThunderQuack for the next little while, because that is something that I've never really done that I should probably do more, which is use that platform as a way to let people know. I didn't need to. I had a very, very good paying job, so it wasn't something that I was concerned with, but I am concerned now. So I would like to draw things and make logos for money for you if you require that. Or like some people, they don't require it, but they just ask me to do it anyways. I have a couple of friends that do that every once in a while. They're just like, I don't need this for anything, but can you please just draw a thing for me? So yeah, but that's it. That's the podcast. We did it. It's the end. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you when we see you.
Well said.